Oh, what's going on, GameLeapers? This is the Jizz, and in today's upload, we're going to be revealing the 10 most underrated champions for patch 12.5. So these picks won't be picked and banned nearly as much as the most OP champions, so you have a much better chance of actually picking these bad boys, but you also have a really good chance of winning with them as well. And in this video, you will get the room page, the best items, the summoner spells, all the information you need in regards to these picks. You will get it, so if you want this detail in all of our future videos, make sure to let us know by smashing that like button down below. And also make sure if you want to master any of these champions, make sure to check out the GameLeap website linked in the description and comment section for all of your League of Legends needs. We upload up to 20 exclusive original videos each week. That's our challenger players and coaches to help you become one of us. So get that exclusive access by signing up, and let's get into the countdown. Now starting off, we're going to talk about a champion most people are going to see picked in the jungle, but we want you guys to start playing Lee Sin in the top lane. And the reason for this is because of all the buffs that came in to Lee Sin's major items. So if we think of Gore Drinker, Death Stance, Black Cleaver, more of Malmortius, these items make Lee Sin pretty much unkillable and still a really big kill threat because all of them have more attack damage. And we also have to consider Death Stance, the new healing passive. It's scaling off your bonus attack damage because you're getting more from these items now. Lee Sin becomes pretty much unkillable, and another big advantage you have of picking Lee Sin in champ select is that people are going to think you're going to the jungle. Next minute, you show up in the top lane ready to roundhouse your opponent. And another really good thing about Lee Sin is his ultimate. With your jungler, you can set up dives like no one else in the top lane, and you also have pretty good roaming potential because of your mobility and of course your Dragon's Rage. So Lee Sin comes in at number 10. Now ahead of Lee Sin, we have another champion who you might expect to see in the top lane, but for Rumble, when you guys pick him in the mid lane, honestly one of the best snowballing 1v9 champions because his early to mid game is so strong, especially once you get your equalizer. You just deal a ton of damage, and because the mid lane is a little more safe than the top lane, you're not going to die as much. Now in terms of the playstyle when you're playing Rumble mid, it really is just about trying to shove and then roam around the map, because in the early to mid game our skirmishing is as good as anyone's. So we want to put ourselves in those situations as much as possible, and this is also why we're running Ultimate Hunter, so we can get more equalizers off. By this point you should have sorcerer shoes and you will be one-shotting pretty much every champion from level 6 onwards. Also in the mid lane, because of the armor buff they gave Rumble a couple of patches ago, even against mages who auto attack you or against attack damage champions, obviously you take less damage from them because of the armor buff. So this also helps your early game, which is already super strong, so Rumble fills the number 9 position. Now beating him to number 8 on the countdown is a champion who's getting changed in 12.5. Now lots of people think that these changes to Seraphine, and in particular her W, are nerfs, but because your teammates are going to benefit more now from your new W, this is so much better for Seraphine's support. Now I'm not saying she's going to be the best support in the game. To be honest, she'll be more of a budget Sona, but she's still going to be good because Sona, we all know it, has one of the highest win rates in the game. So Seraphine's next patch no doubt is going to improve in the support role, and I think a lot of players, for whatever reason, you know, maybe they don't like K-pop that much, but Seraphine in the mid to late game is very, very powerful indeed. Because of her amazing ultimate and the number of heals you can get off, it's very hard to play against the Seraphine, especially when you're playing at range. Now as far as your skill order goes for 12.5, it's probably going to go something like this, where at level 5 you still have 3 points in your Q, but from that point onward you're probably going to max your surround sound and have 5 points in this by level 10. This is just playing on the fact that your W is going to be better for your teammates, and that's what we're trying to achieve when we're playing support. Keeping them alive for longer so they can deal more damage, that's the key. So Seraphine comes in at number 8. Now ahead of Seraphine at number 7, we have another champion who's a bit like Seraphine. This is Karma, but I'm not talking about Karma in the support role, we're talking about Karma mid. And you can play a top lane, but I think in the mid lane she's better just because you have more access to the map. Also mid lane is less scarier because it's shorter, so you shouldn't die as much. Now as far as your rune page goes, we're running second wind for the sustain during the laning phase, and then we're running revitalize, which is going to increase the shields we throw out from our inspire, which we are maxing second. And Karma in solo queue is particularly OP because Karma loves having damage dealers, and some of the most popular champions in the game are these high damage dealers. So if we think of Vayne as the AD carry, if we think of Kha'Zix in the jungle, if we think of Set in the top lane, pair these with a Karma in the mid lane who's going to get more gold than playing support, it is just so hard to deal with. So if you see your teammates picking these high damage dealers, seriously consider locking in Karma in the mid lane. Now filling the number 6 position, guys, on this countdown, we're going to head back to the bot lane and talk about, to be honest, a support who should be picked a heck of a lot more because he's so broken. Even though Riot nerfed the mana cost in Amumu's bandage toss, it doesn't really matter because as long as you land one of these, the enemy champions are going to die. And look at these stats for me. With this rune page with Aftershock, Cheap Shot, and then Ultimate Hunter, a 67% win rate in high elo. This is crazy. And then look at the summoner spells for me, close to an 80% win rate in close to 25 matches. Now I get it, it's not the biggest sample space in the world, but this just goes to show you how successful this champion can still be HP in the support role. And if we go down to the skill order, we're maxing our E first because of that damage reduction buff. This means that Amumu is going to be tankier by level 9 and almost unkillable. And we're running Aftershock as well, remember, so the damage reduction with Aftershock and the tankiness this gives you, this champion in the support role is criminally underrated, so make sure you guys pick him in 12.5. Now starting off the top 5 in this countdown, we're heading to the mid lane and talking about a champion who got designed because of that War of the Worlds movie with Tom Cruise. This is Vel'Koz. And for Vel'Koz at the moment, lots of things are going well for him, for her, for it. So if we think about Vel'Koz's items, Luden's Tempest, Sorcerer's Shoes, Shadow Flame, this magic pen setup gives him so much damage that if you land one E, the enemy champ is going to die. And it also means that your Life from Disintegration Ray deals a ton of damage, regardless of how many spells you land. As long as you have these items, your ultimate is going to wreak havoc. Now as far as our runes go, because Vel'Koz's big disadvantage is mobility, like you don't have any legs, so we need Relentless Hunter to get us around the map to evade skill shots and damage and from actually dying. But what's also important is to put 3 points in your Void Rift, and then we're going to max up Plasma Fission, because in the early game during the laning phase, our wave clear is pretty subpar. It's one of the worst in the game, so putting 3 points in our Void Rift is going to give us the minion clear we need to be able to battle it out with the enemy champion in the mid lane. So Vel'Koz comes in at number 5. Do not underrate this champion in 12.5. Now ahead of Vel'Koz coming in at number 4 on the countdown is unfortunately the only AD carry, because for Samira, she's the only one getting changed in 12.5, and to be honest, there aren't really that many underrated AD carries at the moment, but Samira definitely will be because of the buffs. So HP per level, this is up. Armor per level, this is up, and your ultimate's cooldown is down by 3 seconds. Now these HP and armor per level buffs, these make you tankier and harder to kill. And remember, we're still getting a bit of tankiness from our items because we are going to be going steel caps in most games, so Samira is just going to be a lot harder to bring down. Now the ultimate cooldown is the attacking buff. Well, you might not need it, but it's just nice. This means that Samira is going to be better in 12.5, and to be honest, with the AD carries at the moment, like Jinx, like Aphelios, like Jhin, who are picked a lot, Samira can destroy these champions. If you can get going in the early game, it is all but GG, and these buffs will allow you to do that a bit more. So Samira fills the number 4 position, but starting off number 3, the bronze medalist for 12.5 underrated, this is Gnar. And Gnar is here because he's one of these champions who can abuse this Hull Breaker kind of meta that's happening in the top lane. And you might be thinking, why would I play Gnar when Hull Breaker for ranged champions is getting nerfed? Now this is completely true, but the thing is, we're really getting Hull Breaker for your Mega Gnar, because when you have your Mega Gnar, if you are a good Gnar player, you will be fighting in the 1v1, in the 1v2, in the 1v3 with your ultimate going. And this is when you become a melee champion, and to be honest, because of the extra HP you're getting from Hull Breaker and even the damage itself and the tankiness, it makes Mega Gnar pretty much unkillable. And as far as the rest of your items go, for your Mythic you can go Stridebreaker, Trinity Force, even Divine Sunderer, depending on who the enemy top laner is. But after this is where you probably want to be building Black Cleaver, even Thornmail, Wit's End, again depending on the enemy top laner's damage. But the Black Cleaver buff with more attack damage, ability haste, is actually really underrated for Gnar. For sure it benefited a lot of champions in the top lane, but for Gnar, the movement speed, the kite it gives you, even the stickiness, this just adds to your kill threat in the top lane, while still being a very good item once you get into those team fights, so the enemy AD carry has less chance of actually escaping. So Gnar, and in particular Mega Gnar, come in at number 3. But just ahead of Gnar coming in at number 2 is a jungler who's getting picked a heck of a lot more in pro play and in higher elo, and this is Volibear with Press the Attack. And this champion in the early game is arguably the strongest on the Rift. So if you want to win games by 5-10 minutes, no worries, just pick Volibear. Because of the 12.2 buff that increase your attack damage per level, this means that Volibear is going to hit harder as the game progresses, but even in the early game it means something. It means that your ganks are scarier, your clear is quicker because you're dealing more damage, and we also have to think about the Sky Splitter buff where it reduced its cooldown by 2 seconds. And on top of this, if we think about the new Chem Tank, so the refuel passive, pair this with Dead Man's Plate attack passive, Volibear can deal so much damage while still being one of the tankiest on the Rift. So not only are you not going to die during these fights, but you're also going to stay alive and deal a ton of damage to the squishy enemy champions. Just remember that if you guys are going to pick Volibear, make sure you get your Q at level 3, because we're about hitting level 3 pretty much free of charge, and that's when you can go crazy with the ganks and snowball games pretty much better than anyone else. Now the number 1 low-key broken champion guards for 12.5. Like a lot on this countdown, you might expect to see her in her normal role, and this for Vayne is obviously as an AD carry, but I'm talking about Vayne in the top lane, and specifically about Vayne with Blade of the Ruined King. Now I know here that UGG is recommending you guys to go shield bow, but to be honest, a Blade of the Ruined King rush in the top lane at the moment against champions who are rushing Hullbreaker in particular, so champions like Gnar, Yorick, Alawi, Vayne does incredibly well because of the HP Hullbreaker is giving these champions, and because Blade of the Ruined King is giving you 2% extra on hit from a few patches ago, 12.3, this means you're going to be shredding these tankier champions with more HP even more than you are already. And because you're a ranged champion in the top lane, you actually have a much better chance of carrying games from this lane than being bot lane with a support and against two champions who are probably going to make your life very annoying in the early going. In the top lane, you pretty much have a free scaling lane, so once you do get to your 2-3 item spike, you will be so far ahead that the game is just GG. Just remember to max your W, because we want to be dealing as much damage as possible to these tankier champions, and the game is yours for the taking. So those were the 10 most underrated champions, guys, for patch 12.5, which will be hitting the rift very soon. So make sure you pick up these champions and play them next patch to give yourselves the best chance of winning. And until tomorrow's daily season 12 upload, this has been Coach. Peace.